Today we will be talking about the Minamata Disaster in Minamata, Japan. So to start, in the mid-1950s, the people of Minamata, Japan reported numbness in their limbs, difficulty seeing, tremors in their arms and legs, and brain damage due to unknown reasons. It was on May 1st, 1956, the Minamata disease was discovered. The Minamata disease is a methylmercury poisoning associated with daily consumption of fish and shellfish heavily contaminated with the toxic chemical mercury. Minamata is a small fishing town on the coast of Japan, which makes sense as to why fish would be the main diet for residents there. Scientists immediately suspected the fish in Minamata Bay were being poisoned. And this is because methylmercury, after being discharged in the sea, accumulates in fish and shellfish by absorption through gills and the digestive tract. And in this picture, you can see that mercury is being dumped into the water and being absorbed by the fish through their gills and skin. And when humans consume the fish, they get it through eating and their digestive tract. So to continue background information, Chizo Corporation, based in Tokyo, had a factory in Minamata. They mainly produced liquid crystals, preservatives, and chemicals such as acetaldehyde. Chizo Corporation was suspected for blame immediately and turned out to be the actual reason why mercury poisoning had occurred in Minamata, Japan. This was because Chizo had increased production of acetaldehyde and assumed seawater would dilute the toxicity of the waste. Chizo had changed the drainage channel from Minamata Bay to Minamata River, thinking that it would dilute the toxicity of the waste in a safer way. However, it was found later that patients of mercury poisoning appeared both around Minamata River and Minamata Bay. And it was also found out later on that Chizo Corporation had dumped approximately 27 tons of mercury into Minamata Bay. And in this picture right here, it just shows that the Chizo factory is right in the middle of the river and the bay. And the corporation had dumped mercury into both the bay and the river. Okay, so who is affected? For the past 36 years, 2,955 people contracted the disease and 1,784 people have died from it. Pregnant women were one of the main concerns of who were affected, and this was because when pregnant women were poisoned, the babies that they birthed were poisoned as well. Mercury poisoning in children is known to have effects such as gnarled limbs, mental retardation, deafness, blindness, paralysis, and even death. So the recovery from the Minamata disease. In 1959, protests began trying to stop Chizo from dumping waste into Minamata's waters. At the same time, Chizo had actually increased production of acetaldehyde during 1960, 1961, and methylmercury pollution of the sea continued. This obviously caused an increase in patients of mercury poisoning who were discriminated and oppressed in the local community. In 1968, Chizo finally stopped polluting their waters. During this time, lawsuits were filed and Chizo financially compensated over 10,000 people with costs of up to $2.8 million. In October of 1982, 40 plaintiffs filed a lawsuit against the Japanese government, claiming they didn't stop Chizo from polluting the environment and looked the other way while Chizo violated pollution laws. The plaintiffs won the case, and the Japanese government paid over $700,000 in damages. In 2010, Chizo was still found to be paying medical allowances for patients who had mercury poisoning. In 1974, 48.5 billion yen was spent in Minamata Bay to transform the land. They placed dividing nets in the waters and had Chizo buy and catch mercury-contained fish to dispose of them. Concentration of mercury in fish continued to decrease as well when Chizo stopped its production of acetaldehyde. It was in July 1997, Minamata Bay was declared safe and clean. So what can we learn from Minamata disease? The solution to pollution is not dilution. This means that the mercury that was dumped into the bay had high concentrations that were absorbed by the fish, even though Chizo had believed that the water would have diluted the mercury, it actually did the opposite. The placenta is not a barrier to environmental contaminants. This also means that pregnant women believed that even though they were consuming mercury, the placenta would have been able to prevent the fetus from consuming the mercury as well, but this was found to not be true, as when they gave birth to their children, they also had mercury poisoning. The fetus is extremely sensitive to mercury, and complete recovery from industrial waste is impossible. So some of the failures of the Minamata disaster was first, no ban was placed on both fishing and Chizo's dumping operations. The government could have easily placed a ban on where fishermen were allowed to fish, as well as creating penalties if they had disobeyed the ban. The government also did not give Chizo any restrictions in regards to where they could dump their toxic waste. Chizo also rejected requests to stop dumping mercury into the bay during the protests in 1959. There were no warnings provided for local citizens, which also was due to the misleading public relations campaign Chizo had created. Chizo had claimed to make waste treatment facilities, which were later proven to not be effective. As well as at a formal opening, Chizo's president made a gesture of drinking water that had undergone treatment at one of their treatment facilities, but was proven that they did not actually do that. This not only brainwashed the governor, but the fishermen and residents of Minamata. Next, it also took 12 years for the disease to be recognized. And during these 12 years, government agencies and leaders delayed official recognition, and afflicted persons were uncompensated all that time. One of the main ways that another disaster like this one could be prevented is the Minamata Convention, which was created in 2013. It is one of the most recent global agreements on environment and health, and their mission is to control mercury supply and trade, reduce the use, and raise public awareness on mercury poisoning. And in the pictures right here, it just shows the Minamata Convention, some information on it, and people who were poisoned by the mercury in the 1950s who are still alive to this day. So thank you.